I'm a member of Temple Beth Avoda and Temple Emmanuel. And I've been to Israel once for 6 weeks in the early 70s. So I'm told it's changed a lot.
Just a little.
Just a little,
Oh,
okay.
okay, we'll move on to Joyce, Joyce College. I think you have to accept that I'm unmuting you. There you go.
Hi, I'm Joyce College from Newton, Massachusetts. I belong to Temple Beth Avoda as well as Jan. Jan and I are good friends, neighbors. I have never been to Israel. My husband and I were supposed to go this fall, and unfortunately we've had to cancel due to coronavirus. I'll let my husband say hello. His name is Alan Goldman.
Yeah, Alan Goldman. I've been to Israel, but haven't been there for about 35 years. I was there about 4 times, I think, something like that. Thanks. Looking forward to seeing everyone on this trip.
Great. Jacob Miller.
Hi. Yes, this is Jacob and Arlene Miller. We live in Framingham, Mass. We're currently, because of the virus, in Delray Beach, Florida. We expect to come back next week. We've been to Israel 10 times.
I would belong to Temple Israel.
Great. Naomi Stoneberg. There you are. Oh, we can't hear you yet.
You have to unmute yourself still.
I'm Naomi Stoneberg, and I'm sitting in Gloucester, Mass, overlooking Good Harbor Beach. It's delightful. We belong to Temple Beth Elohim in Wellesley, where we lived for 30 years, and Ahavat Achim in Gloucester. And I think I've been to Israel about 35 times. We try to go every year. And our last trip was in February, where we took our daughter, son-in-law, and 7-year-old grandson on a culinary trip. It was fabulous.
Great. Kurt and Sue.
Well, we've been to Israel, I think about 7 or 8 times, and we were there a year and a half ago. We were supposed to go in May. Our grandson is a student at Gann Academy. And they were supposed to go for their 6-week trip, and we were going to go and meet him, but unfortunately everything was canceled. So this is our trip this year.
Also, a few times I've been on the Israel bike ride sponsored by the Arva Institute, which went from Jerusalem to Eilat and back again. So that's it.
Very cool. One of JNF's partners. Jim Saber.
Okay, that would be me, and this is my wife Sue.
Hi.
We're members of Temple Israel in Natick. I've known Doobie since high school. I won't say how long it's been, but it's been a while. And let Sue talk about our Israel trip.
Our first Israel trip was 1995, and then 2 years ago we went with the Dopelts on the Haifa Boston connection, and we did tutoring and sightseeing there. So we're really looking forward now to this trip.
Great. I apologize in advance if I say your name wrong. Edie? Correct me if I'm wrong. I can't unmute. There you go.
Hi, it's Heidi.
Heidi. Okay.
Okay.
Now I know.
Hi, I'm Heidi Lanier. I'm from Marlborough, Massachusetts. I belong to Temple Israel of Natick, and I've been to Israel once, and that was 4 years ago.
Great. Lorraine. We can't hear you yet. Oh, oops.
Can you hear? Okay. David and Lorraine Tellegen. We also belong to Temple Israel in Natick. We live in Framingham, and we've been to Israel only once, and that was back in 1993. And so we are really looking forward to this.
Great, thanks. Sue.
Hi, my name is Sue Herzberg. I've been to Israel once, way many years back in high school, and when I competed in the Elitzoria Games, which is a lesser version of the Maccabiah Games, kind of like the Bay State Games. And I've always just dreamed of being able to go back to Israel, but I could never afford it. So I'm just so excited about this opportunity to see our wonderful land, milk and honey, and just to be able to enjoy this with everybody on the bus. I'm just so very, very excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Doobie and Margie.
Hi, I'm Margie Matros. Hi, Sarah. I've been in Israel. I lived in Israel for 9 years. I actually grew plants for JNF for a short amount. We used to trade plants with JNF. I was a kibbutznik, lived on 2 different kibbutzes, kibbutzim, and was a student there for a year, and met Doobie there, had 1 child there. So, and we were just back in February.
And my quick story is I lived there basically 18 years, founded a kibbutz, and the rest is history.
Great. Cheryl.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Cheryl and my husband Herb Barenberg.
Hi.
And we went to Israel in 2010. We had a wonderful experience and we were former members of Temple Beth Am.
Thank you. Carolyn.
That's me. Carol, and my husband, I'll speak for you.
I speak for me. I'll speak for myself.
Okay.
So.
Been to Israel at least 35 times. We go every year. We have family there. We have an apartment there. And we have family there. So we're excited about this opportunity as well because we didn't get to go this winter. We usually go every year.
I just like to add one thing. I was born in Israel and I have visited Israel the entire, up to 1964. And so, and we have been, ever since we were at least another 30 times. So,
You served in the idea.
and so, you know, I'll listen to what you have to give us. Thank
Hopefully this will be a little different than any of your other trips. I see Norm just joined us. We're just quickly introducing ourselves.
It's Norm and Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been to Israel for the last 9 years. We go there every winter to volunteer teach in school in Haifa. And we love going there every year. We're there for 6 weeks every year.
Great. Alan or Alana? Sorry, I'm reading your names on your screen. Peck. There you go.
You'll never figure it out. It's Alan and Lisa Avery Peck. We're members of Temple Israel of Natick, and we both, along with studying at Hebrew U, where I was a graduate student for 2 years, and Lisa was an undergraduate, and I lived on kibbutz for a year. We've been to Israel a lot other than that.
Great. Michael Lieberman.
Hi, so I'm Eileen and my husband Michael Lieberman. We actually, I was on a youth tour in the 70s for 5 weeks in Israel, which was awesome. But more importantly, last year, Michael and I both went on the 12-day door-to-door adult trip to Israel with the Cone camps. And it was absolutely the trip of our lives. And we thought we'd come back for some snippets on your trip.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Andrew Bloom. There you go.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Andy Bloom. My wife, Nancy, is elsewhere on a link, I think. Anyways, I've been to Israel once, probably about 30 years ago. Went on a JNF tour, a young professionals tour. Very much enjoyed it. My daughters are both, one's in college. just was able to go to Israel for the first time this year in January. And my youngest, just graduating high school, just did a tour a year or two ago. So looking forward to seeing the updates in the country. My wife's never been over there. I'm trying to hopefully get this tour, convince her to get over there, see the live thing one of these days. I'm also a member of Temple Israel Natick, and I'm looking forward to this.
Great, thank you. Cindy Drucker. There's a lot of you. Hold on, there you go.
Hi, everybody. So Cindy Drucker. I was involved a little bit with JNF about 15 years ago when I was in Boston. I had moved to DC and just moved back to Boston in January for a new position with Mass Mutual here in Seaport, which is where I'm living now. I sold my place in Brookline when I moved to DC. So, but my background is all in sustainability and environmental work, and that was my strong interest in connecting to JNF, and I'm happy to be back. I have not gone to Israel. I've traveled all over a lot of places all over the world, including Saudi Arabia, but not to. So I look forward to the trip and to meeting all of you.
Great. Jane and Jerry. There you go.
Hi, I'm Jane, and my husband Jerry. We've never been to Israel. We had planned to go to Israel this July to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary, and of course that got scrubbed.
Hello, I'm Jerry. We've never been to Israel, as Jane said, and this tour came along at a perfect time for us because we were hoping, like Jane said, to go to Israel to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary, and this is the best alternative. And we're really looking forward to it. Happy to be part of the group.
Great.
Who is talking just now?
So that was the square that says Jane and Jerry. Just so you guys know, we actually overbooked this trip. So we have so many people because Doobie's so amazing that you may not see, you probably see everyone but 2 squares on a regular computer. You usually see 25 squares. So if there's a little arrow to your right that says, it's a little arrow and under it says 1/2. So if there's someone you don't see, then if you go to the right, you should be able to see them. So we really are a full house.
No, I don't think
Okay, yes.
Let's move on to Marlene.
Hi there, my name is Marlene Dodick, and I'm a member of Temple Israel, also from Brooklyn. I heard Jan was from Brooklyn. And I've been to Israel twice, once many, many years ago, about 37 years ago, just after the Lebanese war. And then 12 years ago, I went with a few people from Temple Israel. We went there representing Passport to Israel. So it's been a while since we've been there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Joanne.
Hi, my name is Joanne David Kasdan, also a member of Temple Israel. I've been to Israel many times. Last time was 1990, but I lived in Israel for 2 years in the 70s.
Great. Eileen.
Hi, I'm Eileen Winston, and Gary Rosenberg is here with me. We decided to share a screen. But we went to Israel 9 years ago on the same program that Marlene did. It was the Follow Me program. And like all of the kids that we met that were on the Passport to Israel program, we thought our trip was the best. So we're really looking forward to going back again.
Great. Kim. I don't see Kim.
Why?
Oh, is that your other square?
Yeah,
That's the other computer. I don't know
You
why
can
it has
turn that one
name,
off.
but
You could exit on that one.
I may go down.
Oh, okay. Let's see if I can remove it. Then you'll be able to see more screens on one screen.
There you go.
I think we almost fit on one screen. Okay. Rebecca.
Hi, I'm Becky Starr, and I'm also a member of Temple Israel. And Sarah Hefes, I think I've known you since you were a little girl. You're from Sharon, right? I lived in Israel in high school for a year, and then for my junior year of college at Hebrew U, I went. And then I've led a couple of trips to Israel through USY Pilgrimage, and haven't been there in a while, unfortunately. And so I am here very excited to see Israel, even if virtually, and to support this program. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So I see one more screen that says iPhone 2. Does that belong to anyone for your sound? Because everyone I think should be here is here. iPhone 2?
Hi, that's me. I'm Nancy Blum.
Oh, okay. Great. So Andy kind of gave you a little introduction, but if you want to say anything additionally.
No, just I'm excited to do this trip.
Great. So what? We got everyone.
Doobie, do you want to say anything to set us off?
Sure. First, I just want to welcome everybody and thank everybody for jumping on the bus with us here. I'm very excited to go back so soon. Never expected to be back that soon. I know this was meant to be a Temple Israel bus. Somehow we have some other people somehow through, I guess there were other sites that somehow connected to ours, but we welcome everybody who's not from Temple Israel. I think at least 20 are from Temple Israel and a few others jumped on the bus, but welcome and thank you all. And great, thank you so much to Sarah and thank you so much to Rena and thank you to JNF for this extraordinary idea. I wish I had thought about it. And looking forward to Jacob's presentation, which I've seen the first one already and very excited.
Great, so we'll turn it over to Jacob for him to introduce himself and start us off.
And a reminder to everyone, this is when you can turn to speaker view if you didn't already. So you want Jacob to be the biggest part of your screen. Take it away, Jacob.
Hi, shalom everybody. Shalom from Israel. Thank you for joining this wonderful initiative, which is very important for us as Israelis and personally. All of the tour guides are involved in these projects. It's really a fantastic thing that happened to us, totally unexpected. And when they approached us to put this program together, they said, go ahead, you have an hour, 4 days, show us Israel. And I said, my goodness, how can we show the whole of Israel in 4 hours? Moreover, some of you have never been to Israel, some of you have been many times, and I figured, you know what? I'll put most of the information on the links that Sarah mentioned. So when you view this presentation with me today, I will comment on some of the items, and then the rest of it, you'll be able to come and visit and revisit and share with friends and relatives. Click on the link so you can read more about the various sites that I will be showing you. A moment, let me turn it into a slideshow. I hope everybody can see this slide. Wave for me if everybody can see the first slide. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So this is our trip, and thanks again, of course, to both Sarah and Rena, and thank you, Doobie, for working with me, all of you, to put this trip together and for the pictures that you have contributed to the presentation. So first of all, we boarded the plane, whether we left from Boston or some other airport, and here we are coming to Israel. Look where in the world we are, a tiny little piece of a country surrounded by all these wonderful neighbors of ours. Look at the size of some of these countries and what it means for us to be surrounded by these locations. The trip I've put together, I'll show on this schematic map. We'll start at the Ben Gurion Airport, where we will land shortly, go to Jerusalem, down through the Judean desert by way of the Dead Sea, the Arava Valley, all the way down to the shore of the Red Sea in Eilat, and then work our way up by way of the Negev Desert to Beersheba, to the Gaza envelope, by way of the coastal plains to Tel Aviv, Herzliya, Caesarea, Haifa, Rosh HaNikra, all the way up to Tzfat, Mount Hermon, the Golan Heights, Sea of Galilee, the valley, the Jordan River Valley, a few additional sites in the lower Galilee and the Valley of Jezreel, before we will work our way back to the airport. But about 600 slides, I hope you'll be able to be awake and alert, but I know you will because we're going to some fantastic places. So everybody knows Israel, the way it was set following the War of Independence. Originally, we were supposed to have a much smaller place, but finally we were given this kind of land. And 19 years later, in 1967, the Six-Day War, where Israel took the Sinai Desert from Egypt, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank from Jordan, the Golan Heights from Syria. And that's the situation. I will mention a little about the complex situation we have. The Sinai, of course, was given back to the Egyptians following the peace agreement in 1979. And now we have very friendly relationship with both Egypt and Jordan. It's a very cold peace, but we can still hop on the plane and go there or sit in a bus and go there, which is for us still very exciting after not being able to do that for so many years. So, you know some of the statistics about Israel, and again, you can come and visit and revisit as many times. Just one thing I wanted to point out, 8,000 square miles, that's about the size of New Jersey. Look at the composition of the population, and that's a significant figure, over 20% Arab people who are Israeli citizens, members of the parliament, high-ranking police officers, Supreme Court judges, all kinds of stuff we will talk about as we visit the country. So we have landed at the Ben Gurion International Airport, and here we are boarding our bus. JNF Tours always use wonderful, comfortable buses with Wi-Fi, with USB to recharge your phone or whatever. So we'd like you to make yourself comfortable. This is gonna be our home away from home for the next few days. Obviously, you think about Israel, one of the first places one wants to go to will be Jerusalem, and that's what we'll do. So we landed at the Ben Gurion International Airport, which is 10 miles out of Tel Aviv, 30 odd miles out of Jerusalem. It's not gonna be a long ride, which will get us to the city. The city itself is the largest city in the country. You see the population, and again, look at the complicated composition between the Jews and Arabs in the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is basically made of many, many different parts stretching over a large area, but we have two major focal points. One will be the Old City with the neighboring mountains, Mount Scopus and Mount of Olives. Subsequently, by way of the various neighborhoods, we go to the western part of the city. That's where we have the parliament, the government building, the museums, university, and what have you. But we'll do that as we visit the city. When people used to come to the country at that time on foot or on horseback or camelback, Jerusalem was on the mountain King's Highway, and you would usually come either from the north or the south, but you'll ascend this mountain, Mount Scopus, to see, to view. That's the first time the city was seen, was revealed to anybody approaching the city from the top of the mountain. And that's what we'll do. And we'll begin by saying, Shehecheyanu, welcome to Israel, welcome to Jerusalem. We move from Mount Scopus to the Mount of Olives. You know, this is the most amazing mountain. It is the oldest and largest Jewish cemetery continuously being used 2,800 years. Jewish people opted to be buried here because many people are waiting for the arrival of Mashiach, and the belief is he will make his way down from the top of the mountain, and all these dead people will resurrect and join him as he will walk into the Temple Mountain through this gate, the Golden Gate, which will open wide on its own as Mashiach draws near to the temple that will somehow be built on the location where now we have the Muslim shrines. But that has been a very old tradition, and people will still opt to follow it. Thank you, Dubi, for contributing the pictures, and you will not believe from how many angles Jerusalem can be so exciting. We're gonna see the city from various directions. and each offers us spectacular views of the city. Needless to say, one of the focal points will be the Western Wall, which we will get to very soon. But before we do that, we'll start where it all began, at the city of David, a tiny little village next to the only spring. Again, thank you, Dubi. Again, next to the only spring we have in the vicinity, and the spring was down here. The city was this tiny little hill. This detail is from a scale model we will visit later. This one shows us what did the city look like 2,000 years ago. But 5,000 years ago, when it was founded, a tiny little piece of nothing, a small village with a couple hundred residents, and the water fountain was down here, which made it very tricky. We will go and visit the site, visit the archaeological digs, and work our way all the way down. Don't worry, you won't have to climb the steps back. We have a bus waiting for us at the bottom of the hill that will bring us back to the upper section. But one of the reasons we go down is because of the story of the water. That has always been the story in Israel, as it is now. By the way, tonight when you will be washing your faces and take a shower in the hotel, please be advised that 80% of the water in Israel are now desalinated. That's the biggest revolution in thousands of years. For the longest time, we were so careful about not wasting any totally unnecessary drop of water, but right now, you can make yourself comfortable and enjoy that shower you deserve after the long flight. But look at the way they had to do it thousands of years ago, digging shafts and tunnels to bring the water from outside the city walls into the city, especially in the year 701 BCE, when the Assyrians besieged the city and King Hezekiah built the tunnel. That's one of the most exciting engineering projects anywhere in the world. Can you imagine, 2,700 years ago, they built a tunnel 733 yards long. They started from both directions, and with not a single mistake, they met each other and they maintain a gradient that let the water go into the pool of Siloam, which is inside the city. So those of you who will be daring, will give you a torch and we will go through the tunnel. The water is not even knee-high, and it's a nice experience. For those of you who are not that excited to do so, don't worry. We have a dry tunnel for you to take, and we'll both meet at the end of this visit. I am very excited about an inscription that was found from 2,700 years ago, telling the story of how the two groups digging the tunnel, how they met. A beautiful description. Can you imagine? You were reading a text that was written 2,700 years ago. The joy of the people. There is also a short footage here, and there are links. So when you will be at home watching it on your own, at your leisure, you click on the arrows and you'll be able to watch the movies, or click on the links and read much more about the sites that we visit. This is another perspective, another point. Thanks, Dubi, again. And Sarah, thank you for the pictures you have sent me. This is the Goldman Promenade, a new point of view into the city, this time from the south-southeast, looking at the Mount of Olives, Mount Scopus, and the various villages surrounding this area. These are mostly the Arab villages of East Jerusalem. And we'll enter the city wall. Jerusalem has been a walled city for the longest time, but each time the walls were built in slightly different locations. Sometimes they incorporated larger areas or smaller areas. The current walls we see today were built by the Turkish Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, who ordered the construction of the wall, and they were built between 1537 and 1542. One of the main gates most people will enter will be the Jaffa Gate, and will enter into the old city itself. Of course, we are very tempted to make it first to the Western Wall, which is such an important site for all of us. The situation is, very rarely will you see it like that. Most often with the celebrations and festivities, that's what it would look like. I shouldn't say it, but regretfully, they don't pray together. The men pray on one side and the ladies pray on the other side. And personally, I'm not too excited about it, but that's the situation. By the way, look at what it looks like now with the social distancing. Look how they have subdivided the esplanade, the platform, the square kind of, out right next to the wall where they don't want the people to get too crowded together. If you didn't do it yet on the way here, I will give you some notes to approach these wonderful stones of the Western Wall and to put the notes you wrote in between the stones of the Western Wall. You make a wish, you say a prayer, you give thanks, you express an opinion or yearning or whatever, and you can write it in any language, of course, and we put it in between the stones of the wall. What is the Western Wall? People say the last remaining part of the temple. Well, not exactly. There was a small hill here, like the neighboring hills, and 2,000 years ago, King Herod wanted to build here the biggest and most beautiful temple anyone has ever seen. How can you put such a big temple on a small hill? So what he did, he built this retaining wall all the way around the hill. He filled up the space between the wall and the hill with lots of rocks and stones and dirt and gravel and pebbles and whatever, created the flat top on top of which the temple was built. The temple, which was built in about the year 20 BCE, was destroyed in the year 70 of the Common Era. So it stood there less than 100 years. And once it was destroyed, Jews were never allowed to get on top of the mountain until 1967. Imagine, 1900 years. First, the Romans didn't let us up, then the Byzantines, then the Saracens, then the Byzantines came back, then came the Arabs, then came the Crusaders, then came the Ayyubids, then came the Mamelukes, then came the Ottomans, and then came the British and the Jordanian. So the first time everybody is totally free to come and visit is now since 1967. When we stood down at front of the Western Wall, that's the area we were looking at, which is just a 1/9 of the full length of the wall. We cannot see this section nowadays because now we have the houses of the Muslim quarter leaning against the Western Wall. So what we'll do, we'll follow the archaeologists and go underground. We'll go underneath into one of these tunnels. And again, it will be fascinating for you to read once you'll click on the link. And we'll walk these narrow tunnels that have enabled us to see the full length of the wall and see the actual stones out of which the wall was built. I'm most fascinated by this huge stone, which is 42 feet long, 16 feet high, 14 feet deep, 560 odd tons. And I say, my goodness, how did they lift it? How did they position it so precisely on top of the other stones? We are into a very special experience as we walk through the tunnels. At the end of the tunnel, we'll walk through an even earlier cavity, a water project from the Hasmonean period from the 2nd century BCE. But we don't only want to visit just the Western Wall as a great place as it is. We'll go now to the Southern Wall. The Southern Wall is built at the same time as the Western Wall, and these are original gates. Can you see these arches? Original gates which used to lead to the temple. And that's the place where one can come and celebrate your bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, and the whole family can be together. You will not have to be separated. So that's a major place where we'll come and celebrate these festivities. And we can also proceed and visit these steps. Guys, these are the original steps that used to lead to the temple 2,000 years ago. And I always think about all these wonderful places you must have visited. You went to Europe, you might have seen Greece and Rome and see there's gorgeous shrines and temples, except that most of these old civilizations which left us, these temples, the civilizations are gone, the cultures are gone. We do not have any temple to show for, but we have these steps. And these are the steps where the prophets stood and where the prophets gave the world some of these immortal exclamations. They will beat their sword into plowshares, and they will teach no war, no more, and all of the other wonderful precepts and concepts. So personally, I'm very excited when I visit these. You see, they are hewn out of the rock. They are original steps that used to lead to the temple. Now we'll begin talking about what's inside the city, other than the Western Wall, of course. So we stand in a place where we look at the Armenian quarter, the Jewish quarter, the Muslim quarter, and the Christian quarter. There are 2,300 Jews in the Jewish quarter. There are 900 Armenians in the Armenian quarter, 1,500 Christians in the Christian quarter, 21,000 Muslims in the Muslim quarter, which is the largest of them all. So we look at some of these beautiful buildings we have in the Jewish quarter, residential and public building, lots of synagogues, lots of shrines and sanctuaries, and excavations have revealed the most remarkable street we knew about, but we never knew where it was because it was covered by layers and layers of dirt. Street level is all the way up here, and it was there when we came here first 40 years ago to dig up this place. How did we know about it? Because 126 years ago, they found a church east of the Jordan River from the 6th century, which they excavated. And the church had a mosaic floor showing us the map of the world, the way they thought the world looked like in the 5th and 6th century. In the center of the world was, of course, Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a city surrounded by walls with gates leading into the city. And from the northern gate all the way to the south was this wide street. They gave it such importance. There is a street with curbs. There are pillars supporting wooden beams with ceramic tiles. I mean, unbelievable details. And the ancient churches that used to be at the time, 5th and 6th century. Most important, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So once we discovered it, we realized that in the 12th century, the Crusaders have covered part of this wide street and made it into a marketplace. When we concluded the excavations, we decided to turn it again into a nice mall. This time we have modern Jewish shops set in the old buildings that are medieval architecture dating back to the 12th century. We leave the Jewish quarter and we wander a little through the Muslim and through the Christian quarter. This is the souk, the Arab bazaar, very colorful. Lots of shmates, most of it is made in India and China. Some items are made locally, like the Armenian pottery. And the villagers, the ladies who will bring their fresh produce, they literally carry it with them. They came this morning from the villages. You cannot get anything that is more fresh than what they offer. So we mentioned the Muslim quarter, and the Muslim quarter is arranged around this shrine, this temple mountain with the two sanctuaries, the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Dome of the Rock is this structure hovering above the rock, which is considered by many to be the Holy Rock of Ages. Jewish legend says this is the foundation of creation. When God started creating the world, he started from this rock, and when he made Adam, he collected the dirt from around that rock, and it was on this rock that we had the temple. The first temple built by King Solomon almost 3,000 years ago, another one which was built after 539 when the Jews were allowed to come and rebuild the city, and the last one by King Herod, the one temple which was destroyed in the year 70. That's what the rock looks like from the top. The Muslims believe that Muhammad, the prophet, took a night trip, landed on the rock. They showed the print, the hoof print of the horse, Burak, the winged horse, and then he went to pray at the most extreme mosque. What is the most extreme? Al-Aqsa in Arabic means the farthest, the most extreme. And the mosque where he prayed, now, of course, there was no mosque at the time, but they built this mosque, which is the third holiest place in the world for all Muslims. So if we go a couple slides back, so this is the Western Wall, the holiest place for the Jews. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, third holiest for the Muslims. and the Christian churches of the Christian quarter, mainly and namely the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is the holiest place in the world for all Christians. So you can imagine what a flattering situation, right, for the city. But it's also what makes it so troublesome. Everybody wants it just for themselves. Everybody's convinced God speaks only from their mouth. But it's a very exciting place to visit. The Christians believe this is where Jesus was crucified, died on the cross, buried and resurrected from the dead. Easter, holiday of resurrection, special ceremonies take place with the fire, very exciting. They carry this fire imagined by airplanes all over the world. So if you step into a church in Russia and you see some people lighting candles, they use the same fire which is kept going from the one which was brought from Jerusalem on Easter. So we have here the Greek Orthodox shrines, we have the Catholics, we have the Armenians, we have the Copts, the Nestorians, the Assyrians, the Ethiopians. Everybody's situated around this church. We'll wander now into a very interesting site, the Citadel. Some of you have visited it over the years. Actually, the beautiful display that used to be there, it used to be the Museum of the City of Jerusalem. Actually, they took that exhibition away, and now they're fixing something to be more attractive for the youngsters with cyber Ds and electronic Ds and multimedia and all kinds of audio visuals and interactive. I didn't see it yet, they didn't open it yet, but it will be interesting to see what they did into these old ruins, the Citadel at the entrance to the city at the Jaffa Gate. But now we look at the Zion Gate. Look at the bullet holes, look at the shooting marks. In 48, the Jews were besieged inside the Jewish quarter in the old city, and the Jordanians were trying to break in. In 67, the Jordanians are inside, and the Israelis are trying to break into the gate. So you can see all these bullet holes around the Zion Gate. The Zion Gate leads us to Mount Zion, another place you'll be interested to read about. So lots of Christian stories, but also a very interesting and important Jewish story, traditional site of the tomb of King David. We will all wander into a Catholic cemetery where we stop and pay respect at the tomb of Oskar Schindler. There are hundreds of tombstones there, but only one has all these stones on top of it, because we do as we do in a Jewish cemetery, right? The Jewish tradition of putting a small piece of stone on the tomb of the person you came to visit, an incredible person, Oskar Schindler. You know him, of course, of the Schindler List. Outside the city wall, we will visit a building which is right across the street from the hotel we are staying at. That's the YMCA. You might not believe it easily, but please be advised. This building, built in 1933, was built by Harmon, David Harmon, the same architect who built at the same year the Empire State Building. Can you imagine the same architect at the same year built such totally different structures? The YMCA building, and again, you can read, it's quite interesting to read about this building. We move on to the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, which presents us with a very strange question. I mean, here is the building, where is the entrance? How come the building doesn't face the view, doesn't look at us? Because when it was built in 1966, that was before the Six-Day War, and the Jordanian snipers were somewhere in this direction. So it would have been very dangerous to access the Knesset, where the people coming in and out will be exposed to snipers, sharpshooters fire. So even though we don't have that danger anymore, but you cannot turn the building around. So that's how the building stands now, turning its back. But we go into the Knesset and visit the different halls. Before we go there, we stop for a minute and look at the menorah, especially because we'd like to hear about the different stories depicted here, from biblical, later history, to the foundation of the State of Israel and a struggle for independence. So it's quite an interesting work of art done by a Jewish artist in England, donated to us by the British Parliament in 1958, when Israel has celebrated their 10th anniversary. But it's not all history and religion, lots of art, lots of culture. That's the Israel Museum, a building which houses an incredible collection of archaeology from the Near East, mostly Israel, Judaica, Israeli art, Jewish art, a huge collection of Impressionist, and even you see Ashish Kapoor now stands here behind the building. We have a magnificent sculptured garden, the Billy Rose Garden, and we will enter not the whole museum on our own, together. You can go and visit on the free hours we'll give you the next days, but we will together enter to visit the Shrine of the Book. This shrine houses maybe the most important archaeological discovery of all times, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the oldest known version of the Bible written in the 2nd century and the 1st century BC. And I think you can read it. If you know a little Hebrew, I think you can easily read La Alot et La Mishpat. Can you see La Mishpat? I think you can actually read it. If you can read it just a little Hebrew, it's written in the same language, using the same alphabets. You can imagine how exciting. Can you see the different Cherev, Ve'et, Tal, and so on and so on. Next door, we visit the scale model. The scale model shows us Jerusalem the way it appeared between the years 42 and 70 of the Common Era. So we'll walk around and look at the temple, a reconstruction of what did the temple look like, the chambers, the treasury, the Sanhedrin, the seat of the elders of the Jews, where lots of the restrictions and orders and rules and regulations were set. And we look at the villages which were incorporated to the wall, the houses of the people who toil for a living, and the mansions of the wealthier people, the palace of King Herod and the citadel protecting the entrance into the city. This fortress was used by Herod's troops and subsequently the Roman troops to supervise and make sure things were kept quiet and under control inside the temple when the pilgrims would come 3 times a year, of course, on Sukkot, on Pesach and Shavuot. Tens of thousands of pilgrims would come from all over the world, Asia Minor, North Africa, Rome, Greece, Babylon, Persia, Egypt, and beyond. Again, you can read a lot in the link. And the next place we go to will be Yad Vashem. Yad Vashem is Israel Memorial to the victims of the Holocaust. Entering the premises, we walk through the Garden of the Righteous among the nations. There are many trees here, and next to the trees, there are these signs, and these signs tell us the name of the people who planted or in whose honor it was planted. These are all righteous among the nations. They're all non-Jews who helped save the life of Jewish people, risking their lives. Some of them paid with their lives for saving the Jews. I don't know if you are familiar with this lady. You will read, look it up. Princess Alice, she is the mother of Prince Philip, husband of Queen Elizabeth, and she is a righteous among the nations. She saved Jewish people in her place in Athens during the war. You know, she was totally deaf. So she wouldn't take any instructions from the Germans. She was yelling at them when they came knocking on the door, and that's how she was able to save the Jews. I think you know this lady. I think you know these people, the Jabinskis. You must have seen the movie, The Wife of the Zookeeper. Did you see the zookeeper's wife? The ones who helped save the Jews in the zoo in Warsaw during the war. So they honored us by coming to Israel and planting a tree here. We take them for a tour for 1 week around the country, and then we offer them a big ceremony. We give them a medal and a certificate saying the Jewish people will never forget their noble deeds. I must tell you that I was very fortunate to have traveled years ago. Now I'm afraid there are not so many of them around, and definitely not the ones that can travel. But many years ago, I traveled with quite a few of these people. Luckily, I can be comfortable in a few languages. So I traveled with some of them. And like as Jews, we don't have saints, right, in our religion. But these people, for me, they are my saints, you know, these people who did this incredible stuff. And it's a very special place Yad Vashem, to hear about the story, to see the pictures, see the footage. You walk in like a labyrinth, left and right and left and right, like they were wandering around, concluding in the hall of names, where we try to mention each and every name. The people we have pictures, we put, unfortunately, over a third of the names we don't know. We know that there were people who were killed. You know, we know about communities which were destroyed, families which vanished, but we don't know all the names. We are still researching to find out as much as we can. We'll conclude in a very special and moving visit, the Children's Memorial, and the ones who have been there will probably remember, and the others, please visit this footage which I've included. This is a videotape which you will be mesmerized watching when you go into that memorial. We move in the same neighborhood, right around the corner, we go to Mount Herzl. This is the highest and most elevated mountain in the city. And that's the place where one of the first things we did after foundation, after independence, in 1949, was to send and bring the remains of Herzl, an incredible man, born in 1860. He died in 1904. He was 44 years of age when he died, but the vision he started and the organization he set, by far, for sure, has led to the foundation of the State of Israel, one of the greatest person in the history of the Jewish people, I think, of the world. Next to Herzl tomb, we have the National Pantheon. That's where we bury the heads of state, not all of them, prime ministers, presidents, speakers of the house. You would know the names like Golda Meir, she's buried here. Yitzhak Rabin is buried here. And on the same slope, we have maybe the holiest of shrines for us anywhere in the country, the military cemetery. This picture was taken on Memorial Day, which is very, not this one. This one, I'm afraid we couldn't come. But every year, millions of people go to visit the cemeteries, not only people who lost relatives and loved ones or friends, but we just go and pay respect. Everybody puts a white shirt on and we go. You see, we have chairs that the army puts next to each and every tomb, and we have soldiers waiting to help if any of the families, especially maybe older people or people who have special needs. And we come to them and we say, hi, whom did you come to visit? And they share the stories and we kiss and hug, and it's a very, very emotional and very touching event, very different from any Memorial Day you can experience anywhere else. We make sure that every single tomb is attended to, manicured, cleaned, that we irrigate the plants, we make sure we trim the vegetation, and we put the flag by the tomb of each and every one of them. This year we have commemorated 23,744 victims, not only from statehood. We start counting, anybody would like to guess from what date? 1864. 1864, that's when we started tallying the numbers, and people of course came from all over the world, from all continents, from all origins. As I mentioned, this year, because of the virus, we couldn't visit the cemeteries on Memorial Day, so people were able to come a couple days earlier, and that's what it looked like on Memorial Day. It was quite painful, but you see, we still put the chairs next to each and every tomb, just in case. It was not, you were not supposed to go, but if somebody opted, nobody would turn them away. We just asked them not to go because of the virus, but we were ready for their visits. This is something very special. Even those of you who have been many times to Israel might not have seen it because it opened just a little over a year ago. It's the National Memorial Hall, where we have like these bricks with the names of each and every victim. And when you click on the brick, the story goes on the monitor. So you can see the face, the picture of the people, hear their stories, hear the circumstances in which they lost their life. And every day we hold lots of Kaddish and memorial Yizkor services to the people who happen to have their yahrzeit on that day. We move on and we go totally different ambience. We go to the Machane Yehuda fruit and vegetable market. Everybody freaks out about the halva. I don't know why, with 32 different flavors, with chocolate and coffee and all pistachios and whatever. But the market is changing. Now they're going to have more and more eateries, espresso, bars, coffee shops. Oh, do we recognize these people sitting here? So lots of restaurants, lots of eateries next to the fruits and vegetables. I guess they're making much more money serving food in all of these eateries in the market than selling their fresh produce. Look at the streets, the Jaffa Road, which was converted, used to be a major traffic artery. Now we just have what we call the light train along Jaffa Road, the main street. But before Jaffa Road was paved, before there was anything, came here in the 1860s, one of the greatest persons, this wonderful Jewish philanthropist, Moses Montefiore, who was also a statesperson and a shrewd and clever business person. And he was the one who built the first buildings outside the old city wall in 1862. He offered people to come and live there, leaving their miserable conditions in which they were living in the Jewish quarter, and they were afraid. They said no. He said, I will not charge you rent. They said no. He said, I'll pay you. Just move here. They moved, they spent the day there, and at night they went back to their houses inside the city wall to feel safer behind the locked gate of the city. But gradually they got used to it, and more houses were built. This is the next neighborhood, Yamin Moshe. Today is a very, very fancy, rather costly residential neighborhood. Lots of artists, lots of people of the letters made their home there, Yamin Moshe. Next, we move to one of the latest additions to the city. The city, you know, was divided between Israel and Jordan for 19 years, and after we reunited the city in 1967, there was still a gap. And this was the missing link between East and West Jerusalem, the new city and the West City. So we built this very, very nice, modern, open-air shopping mall with lots of boutiques. There are drugstores, banks, restaurants, coffee shops. But it was not easy because some houses were in the way. It was not, everything was so neatly arranged along this straight line. So what we did, look what we did. We numbered each and every stone. We took a building apart, moved it a few feet left or right, and rebuilt it to look exactly the way it looked when it was first built in the late 19th century. And you can see the numbers on the stones. And inside we have some modern shops selling beautiful modern Judaica jewelry and beautiful Israeli art. Before you used to go to Mamila, many of you used to stroll up and down Ben Yehuda Street with the stores, with the boutiques, with the eateries, the falafel, the pizza, whatever. That's where you will pick your gifts and the names cut out of silver and gold and whatever, the knitted yarmulkas. And you might have taken a nice stroll through the neighborhood. In the nearby streets is the Nahalat Shiv'a neighborhood. One of the first neighborhoods, again, to be built outside the city wall, now houses lots of nice restaurants, boutiques, and shops. And we move to go and visit a totally different part of the city. We go to Mea Sharim. That is the home of the ultra Orthodox communities. Some of them really take you back in time to some incredible locations. Again, you have here some footage to watch some movies, and I'm fascinated by the signs. You can really learn a lot from the signs that they put, because people don't have television, people do not have computers. The cell phones are not smartphones, they buy kosher phones. So they can only place calls. So the only way to communicate to them is by putting these signs on the walls. So this one says, there is no way on earth you should ever set foot in a movie theater. It's an abomination. You cannot watch a movie. If you see the bus and there is a lady driving the bus, God forbid, don't get on that bus. She must be a prostitute. This is a terrible sin. These buses are buses of fornication. Zionists are dogs. The Zionist beast does not belong to the human race. So you can imagine the confrontations we have with them, demonstrations take place. You have no idea how difficult it was just bringing them the story of the coronavirus. It was impossible. They've never heard the word virus before. And how do you explain to them that they cannot be together, that they have to keep, I mean, it was unbelievable. By the way, the walk that we take will be done by bus, because you see, this is very, very nice way of them to say, please do not go through our neighborhood, especially ladies, no matter how modest you think you are. For them, you definitely are not, so we will not walk there anymore. I will point maybe, do you know what a shatnez is? Have you ever seen a shatnez laboratory? Anybody is familiar with this concept? You are not supposed to have your clothes using linen and wool. So to make sure, they buy the clothes, they leave a deposit in the store, they go to the lab, the guy checks it, he pulls the fiber, checks it under the microscope, he puts some liquid, some chemicals on top, and he says it's kosher. Then they go and they pay the full price and go to the store to retrieve the item properly. They really lead a very, very, very different lifestyle. We continue by way of the President House. The Israeli president is just a representative figure. He has no executive power, but the house is open for visit. There is a small museum inside, so we will make special arrangements and we'll go in advance notice, we'll go and visit the museum inside. The Jerusalem Theater, and we live now a little outside of the city. We drive to the nearby Gush Etzion, the Etzion block, a site where Jews have purchased land already in the 30s. In the 40s, there was a community. The communities were devastated by the Jordanians, and it was just the 700 years old oak on top of a tree, which could be visible from a distance. So after 67, when it was made possible, we returned, and that is called Alon Shvut, the Oak of Return. JNF has built here one of the most beautiful promenades. Unfortunately, it is named after these 3 15-year-old boys who were kidnapped by the Arabs a few years ago and killed. So the memorial was erected. I don't know if anyone has ever visited this monument, the Scrolls of Fire, again in the Jerusalem mountain, a most remarkable work of art, and you'll be able to read about it by clicking the link, as well as this Yelin House. And this is a special place, the 9/11 Memorial. It's the only 9/11 memorial outside of the United States, a big JNF project. The names of all the victims are written all the way around. And again, you'll be able to watch this movie on your own. We move to the next place, which is a very, very significant place, the Ammunition Hill. During the Six-Day War in 1967, a tough battle took place here against the Jordanian army, and it's a very big JNF project of commemorating. Look at this artwork. I love it very much. Look what it looks like from the inside. And we talk to the people. We might get some of these fighters or their offsprings, as the case would be, that will share with us the story of the battle here that made it possible later on for the Israeli army to take over the rest of the country. This is a beautiful project where Jewish soldiers who were fighting whatever war can be commemorated in this place, and you can do it yourself. You can report, it's a parent, it's an uncle or a grandparent or somebody, an uncle or whatever, that you want to be mentioned here. And they could, again, be fighting in any war, anywhere in the world. And we'd love to be able to commemorate them here in these walls of Jewish fighters. Again, outside the city a little, the Hadassah Medical Center, the largest medical center in the Middle East, one of the top, you know it. We visit here, not the wards of the hospital, but we go for a beautiful artwork, the Chagall windows. Marc Chagall has designed 12 windows dedicated to the 12 tribes of Israel with the blessings. Two blessings were made. First was Jacob blessing his children, and then Moses was blessing 400 years later the various tribes. So these motifs are done in a beautiful way by Chagall on this stained glass window, and again you will be able to read about them. We continue by this beautiful village of Ein Karem. That's where the Hadassah Medical Center is located, and right next door we visit the Kennedy Memorial. It's a very, very special memorial, like 51 routes to represent the states and the provinces, the territories. It looks like a tree that was cut in the middle, and around it lots of trees were planted, including, you see, Jackie Kennedy planted a tree in honor of her husband, and you can see Teddy Kennedy planted a tree in memory of his brother Robert next to John Kennedy Memorial. And this is a very interesting place. This is the tomb of Arthur Rubinstein. Arthur Rubinstein, the pianist, wanted to be buried here in the Jerusalem mountain, overlooking the magnificent view. And look at the way the memorial is designed. The keys of the piano, and they're made of beautiful marble slabs. So it's a very, very special memorial, and we pay respect. We stop here for a minute to visit the tomb, but also mostly to admire the fantastic view that is seen to us. Look at all these trees, guys. On this trip, we will not see any natural forest. We have very few natural forests in the country, and unfortunately our trip does not take us there because they're not like on the main road. Which means as we travel through the country, every single tree you see was planted by hand over the last 100 years. 350 million trees. I'm sure all of you remember the blue box as children with the giving, putting in the donation for the Jewish National Fund to plant trees in Israel. Many of you must have planted trees. So every tree we see around the country today was planted, and we continue doing so. About 5 million new trees every year, especially on Tu B'Shvat, but we'll be talking about it later on the trip. So we're gonna leave Jerusalem. An hour has gone by. I will be done in a minute. So you'll see we're gonna leave Jerusalem. Look at the dotted line. The dotted line marks the West Bank area. This is Judea, this is Samaria. We will descend from Jerusalem, which is at that high altitude, at 2,600 feet above sea level. We'll go to sea level, and then we'll go down below sea level to the lowest place on the face of planet Earth, which is the Dead Sea. And it will take us no more than 25 minutes. The whole trip will not be even 25 minutes. Before we leave the city, we will notice something very significant, which is this wall. This is the famous wall or fence you must have been hearing about that yet creates yet another item to consider when finally, if ever, we'll sit and negotiate with anybody something. It's an unbelievable project, very costly project, needless to say. And I'm proud to live in a country where the Supreme Court orders the government every now and then to move it a little because it infringes on the Arab people right. Can you imagine? The Supreme Court forces the government, and they would do it. And even though it costs us millions, I'm so proud to live in such a society. The reason for the complicated issue, look at the West Bank, but look how the fence is built. Can you imagine 700 miles? It shouldn't be more than 500 miles. 700 miles because of this intricate way we have to build it. Why? This is something you might be familiar with, the different territories of the West Bank. So you see the dark brown is Area A, controlled by the Palestinians. These, whatever color you call it, I don't know what you call it, is Area B, controlled jointly by Israel and the Palestinians. And Area C is controlled only by Israel. So you've been hearing the news with annexation, with extension. God help whoever wants to make sense of this lunacy. You can just see it for yourself.